What's up, everyone? Today, I want to give you a brief explanation, if I can, of the core sort of theme in Macbeth, which is the allure of power. And by doing so, I will provide you, hopefully, with a good sort of understanding of Macbeth as a person, as a character, as well as the other characters in the play. Okay? Essentially, when it comes to Macbeth, when you want to understand the character of Macbeth, you need to understand this concept or idea of power and the draw of power. In other words, the desirability of power. Because Macbeth is essentially a psychological study of what happens to someone when they become infatuated with the idea of power. They become attracted to power and they begin to desire power the way that a man would desire a woman or a beautiful woman. This is what happens to Macbeth. This also happens to Lady Macbeth, in addition. And you could say Lady Macbeth perhaps has an even stronger desire for power than even Macbeth does, to the point that she is willing to give up her natural femininity, her natural womanhood, when she says, unsex me here, or she says, if I had a child that was feeding from me, and I had made the oath to kill Duncan. Yeah, I had made the promise in order to do this to gain power. I would rip the child from me and smash its head into the ground. So in a lot of ways, her desire for power is even stronger than his, which is why in a lot of ways she is like the driving force behind him, or at least she helps a lot. Okay, she when he begins to question himself and doubt himself if he should do what he's going to do, she provides the additional motivation to push him and to say, no, you need to do this. Okay, because she herself is also in love with or in lust with, it's a better way to put it, power. She is also lustful for power, like he is. Okay. So you could say, in a sense, they do not love each other, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, but they both love power. Yeah, and I want to use another word instead of love because love is a virtue. They both lust after power. Again, like the way that a man might lust after a beautiful woman, like he wants to really sleep with her. That's how they feel about power. Okay. It's a visceral, physical desire thing. Okay. Like how a like how an animal has a what they call prey drive. Like if you um if you see a lion when it's hunting, it has a natural, almost lustful pull drive towards its prey. Huh? It's an almost sexual kind of thing. It's a deep, carnal, ancient drive. It's pulled to the prey. The same thing is that's what they experience when it comes to power. Okay, it's not like for Macbeth, for Macbeth, it's not like it's a good idea to be powerful. For Lady Macbeth and Macbeth, power is their drug. Okay, it's like their drug, the thing that they lust after. Power. It's their drug and the thing that they lust after. That's how you need to understand how they feel about power. They want power like a vampire wants blood, like a predator wants to feed, like like how a person who is a killer wants to kill someone, like a rapist wants to rape. That's how they feel about power. Okay, it's a deep, lustful desire. Okay, now what the play, what the play does is it allows us to see what happens when this lust for power is allowed to manifest itself and it's not stopped. In other words, normally speaking, a person would restrain themselves. Okay. You would restrain this desire to dominate and to have power, so then you can be like socialized, right? So you can be socialized and you can, take part in normal life, right? But with Macbeth, he's not socialized, but he is allowed to express his lust and desire for power to the point that he kills the king and everything else that happens. So the play is Shakespeare's masterwork in terms of allowing us to see what happens psychologically to someone who allows this desire for power, this lust for power, to possess them and to manifest inside of them. That's what the play is. Okay, and we get to see that from the male, which is Macbeth, and the female, which is Lady Macbeth. We get to see what happens to both. Okay, we also get to see, okay, the converse of this, which is with what's his name, MacDonald and Banquo, who act as you're supposed to act. They act with virtue. Okay, because Macbeth and Banquo at the start of the play, they are essentially the same person. Okay, Macbeth and Banquo in the beginning of the play are like the same person. Okay, they are mirrors of each other. So in the beginning of the play, when they meet the witches, and um, this is the original place where this idea of power is not necessarily implanted, okay, but it is sort of unlocked. Okay, it is unlocked. In other words, I don't assume that um, Macbeth only, say, became desiring this power after the witches spoke to him. I don't think that makes sense. But what I think is more likely, what I think is more likely is that Macbeth has always probably had this this desire for power. Okay. It's just that with the witches, he sort of it's darker. It's just that basically with the witches, when the witches came along, they kind of, excuse me, they kind of unlocked this innate desire that he had. So you can imagine Macbeth has always been, there we go. You can imagine Macbeth has probably always been someone that desires power. He's always had a lust for power. Okay. But he's just never really had either the opportunity or he's never had the, what would you say? He's never allowed the fantasy to fully come to his mind. Okay. So the fantasy has always been inside of him. And he's not pushed away the fantasy. Okay, it's always been inside. And this is why when the witches come and the play begins and they start saying all their thing about Fair is foul and foul is fair, and all of that. In a sense, it almost reflects the philosophy which Macbeth has in his head. These are like the opening lines. These are like the opening lines of when the witches come along. Fair is foul and foul is fair. And this, in a sense, is the philosophy that Macbeth has always had in his head. And what this means is good is bad and bad is good. In a simple way, that's what that means. Good is bad and bad is good. Fair means like good, nice, light. Foul means bad, dark, evil. So the philosophy is good is bad and bad is good. This is in his self. This is what he's always had, most likely. And we know that this is most likely because he's married to like a witch, Lady Macbeth. And so obviously he wouldn't have married her if he wasn't like this himself. You see? So it's not that both of them are corrupted by the witches. It's more so that the witches unlock or reveal the corruption which is already inside them. And we know this because when the witches come along, they meet also with Banquo. And they tell Banquo that you're not going to be a king, but your children will be kings. Okay. Now, Banquo, how does he react to this news? Does he change anything? Does he change his behavior at all? He doesn't, right? He doesn't do anything different. He maintains his loyalty and his honor to the king, to the country, and all that. This news does not corrupt him. Why? He doesn't try now to do things to ensure that his children will become kings. Why? Because inside of him, he doesn't have the corruption that Macbeth has. You see? Inside of him, he does not have this inversion of his morality. And to him, fair is fair and foul is foul. Good is good, bad is bad. Banquo, he's correctly aligned. But to Macbeth, he has this corruption inside of him, where fair is foul and foul is fair. You see? And so when the witches come along, and what they represent is like the force of darkness. The witches, they represent like the witches represent like the unnatural, the dark, the yeah, like the satanic, the call of the dark. That's what the witches represent. Okay, the unnatural force, the call of the dark, the voice inside you which says the things which you know are wrong and you know which you should not listen to. Yeah, that little whisper. Like in many religions, this is personified in the form of Satan or like demons and things like that, which is the little whisper which tells you you should do this thing which is bad or that thing which is bad. And most of the time we push this voice away or we don't listen to it. Yeah, we listen to the other voice, which is like do the right thing, do a good thing, whatever. Now, with certain people like Macbeth, they not only listen to this voice, but they encourage it. They encourage it. And they encourage it because they want power. You see, power is the key. They encourage it because they want power. And this voice, the dark one, is like the predatory voice. That's what it is. It's like the predatory, sociopathic or psychopathic kind of voice. In other words, do whatever is necessary to achieve the ends that you want. So you want power? Okay, lie to this person over here. Kill this person over here. Trick this person over here. Do whatever is necessary to achieve your ends. This is also called Machiavellian. Machiavellian after Machiavelli, the 15th century philosopher from Italy who wrote The Prince. So, um, what was I saying? Macbeth, he not only hears this voice, Okay, but he encourages it. Okay, he encourages it, which is why he says something like stay. Yeah, I forget what the full verse is. Something like stay you imperfect speakers. I think that's what it is. Don't use this for quotes if you're gonna do an essay because I forget if this is the actual quote. It's similar to this. He tells them to stay. This is what he and remember that the witches represent the evil inner voice, the dark inner voice. And so Macbeth, he wants them to stay, to talk to him more. He wants them to talk to him more. This is like someone, excuse me, this is like someone who does like a demonic ritual, something like that. This is not to say that demons are real or anything, or Satan's real, obviously not. But the point is, we're talking we're talking psychologically and ethically and spiritually, okay? What it does inside you as a person, or mentally, what it does to you. So he says to them, stay you in perfect speakers, because he wants them to tell him more. He wants to hear more from them. Okay, because the first thing that they say to him is, congratulations, hail Macbeth, Thane of Cawdor. Yeah, which is a new title. And just to give some understanding of what this Thane thing is, Thane, Thane, it basically just means second to the king. It means like Lord. Yeah, like Lord. Think about like if the king is at the top of the pyramid, the Thanes are underneath him and they control like different lands for him. Okay. So, excuse me, what it basically means is an elevation in power. So he has gotten power in his region and then he gets more power in another region. He becomes like prince, if you like. He's not prince, but lord, land owner, military owner, something like that. Second to the king. Yeah, like they work for the king and they make sure that the country gets run properly, yeah, based on what the king wants. All right. Anyway, the point is, all right, that the point is, he wants to hear more from the witches because they are offering him what he lusts for, what he desires the most, which is what? Power. You see, which is why he tells them, stay more, talk to me more. Okay. Whereas Banco, he doesn't do that. He's not desiring more. Okay. Now, what this does, okay, where this goes is eventually, where this goes is, if you imagine the story of Macbeth is like this. Okay, and this is why it's called a tragedy. Okay, this is why it's called a tragedy. Macbeth is called a tragedy because Macbeth, by all accounts, even though I think if you looked closer at him, yeah, I might disagree, but Macbeth, by all accounts, is a heroic individual in the beginning of the play. Okay. Macbeth is a heroic individual in the beginning of the play. And the reason why it's called a tragedy, okay, is because he begins here in the start of the play as hero. He begins as a hero, okay? And he is so heroic that the king is the one that gives him this additional title of Thane of Cawdor. The king gives him a reward, a big reward of like an additional land. You can think about it like a city, huh? Imagine that you're like the mayor or something like that of a city, and the king is so happy with you that he comes and he gives you another city to be the mayor of, to look after and to rule. It's a big honor. The king has honored you in this way. That's what happens to him in the beginning. Okay, because he's so brave, he fought so well, he protected the country from invaders, from traitors and things like this. And so he is in the beginning a hero. He's called Brave Macbeth, Brave Macbeth. But because of his lust and desire for power, and in a sense, he reminds me, in a sense, of Achilles, in a sort of way, of Achilles, who is, I don't know if you'd call him a tragic hero, but he is also a hero. He's from the ancient world, Achilles, from the Iliad by Homer. And Achilles has also this sort of, his thing is more like bloodlust and desire for glory. Okay, anyway, I just thought of that. But in any case, in any case, in any case, Macbeth's desire for power, okay, and his fantasizing and his the fact that he doesn't deal with he doesn't reject the inner dark voice. In fact, he encourages it and he sits with it and he wants it to talk to him more. His scheming side, his do anything to get your what you desire side. And you see this a lot. You see this a lot, this way of thinking, in people who become criminals today. This Machiavellian way of thinking or sociopathic way of thinking. You see this in them, like pimps talk like this. Yeah. If you ever read any books by pimps, I don't recommend that you do it because it's quite disturbing, but or watch their interviews or things like that. A lot of the time when a pimp will talk about why he does what he does and how it is that how it's possible that he can do this thing which is essentially exploiting the body and objectifying the body of someone else who is in a vulnerable situation. Like, how can you take this? And oftentimes they are underage as well, because it's easier to control them. How can you take this 15-year-old girl, say, and then get her and turn her into a prostitute and not feel bad about it? How is that possible, right? You wrecked her, and she's vulnerable too. She comes from like a broken home. She's poor, and you tell her that you love her, and you use all these techniques on her. You tell her you love her, you're gonna look after her, you're gonna provide for her, that she's your woman, and all of this. Huh? You manipulate her, and you make her dependent on you. Yeah, it's very sick, these things that they do. So, how is it you can do this and like not shoot yourself from because you know that you're a devil? How can you not? How do you live with this? And the way that the way that they do it, okay, is because they begin from a very evil philosophy. This is how it happens. They begin from the philosophy that um of selfishness, basically. Okay, that everyone is bad. This is the philosophy that they have. Everyone essentially is bad. People are trying to hurt me. People are trying to hurt everyone. Yeah, certain people you might have heard they talk this way. This is a very dangerous kind of way of thinking. Everyone is out for themselves. Everyone is bad. And so I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get mine. That's how they think. And it's from this dark foundation, okay, from this very dark soil and foundation that the seeds of pimping and everything else, manipulation, exploitation, that they grow from this terrible foundation. Okay, because they don't see other people as human beings, they see them as like chess pieces or objects or something like that. And so for them, it's not a 15-year-old girl from a broken home with a bad, is vulnerable, who needs help, who needs protection. For them, it's I can make X amount of money from her every month. She's like a printing press of money for me. That's how they think about it. It's very sick. And so Macbeth, he thinks similarly, okay, to make him a real person and not just a character. That's how he thinks, okay? To him, the king is not like a human being in the same way that he is a human being, okay? To him, the king is a stepping stone, which he has to step on to get to where he wants to go. Now, this psychologically breaks him, Okay, which is what we're gonna see in the as the play goes on. This psychologically breaks him, and it psychologically breaks every evil person. So even these pimps who act that this doesn't bother them, they are psychologically damaged by it. Okay, you don't get to do evil stuff without selling your soul. The reason it's called selling your soul is because you are empty after you do it. You become a shell after you do it. Which is why you see these people, they're always drinking all the time. They're always high all the time. They're always angry. They never have any peace, ever. They don't have friends. People are always trying to kill them, etc. And they deserve it, yeah. May they all die, if I'm being honest to you. May they all die. They deserve it. So, so, my, um, so that's how he thinks, okay, and we're gonna see what happens to him because of this thinking, and not just that, but because of his actions. Hmm. So the tragedy is, okay, that he starts to play, from all accounts, as a hero. He starts heroically, yeah, as a savior of Scotland, okay, from invaders from Norway, and also from the internal war that's going on, okay, which is trying to kick the king off the throne. So he's a protector of King Duncan. That's where we start. But as the play goes on, as the play goes on, yeah, he goes immediately from hero to what? To murderer. What a big difference. Yeah, he goes from hero to murderer. Big time. And not just a murderer of anyone, but murderer of the king. King. Now, it's important that we mention that it's the king that he kills, okay? Because the king is not just a king, he represents something. Okay. So, and you can see very interestingly that the slope is downward. Yeah. Even though in Macbeth's head, if you asked Macbeth what he's doing, in Macbeth's head, his slope would look like this. You see? His slope would be like this. This would be Macbeth's uh, slope. To him, he would start here. This is the slope in terms of desire for power. So to Macbeth, he's looking at it like this. Okay? He sees this as be like here. Like that. You see? And then he's gonna go upwards this way. That's Macbeth's slope. But as we can see in reality and in terms of what happens to him in the play, both psychologically and actually, this is obviously incorrect. Okay, and the slope is just a downward one. Yeah, from here he was already at the top. He was already at the top. And every action he took from that point was downward, 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 until he hits the bottom at the end of the play. Okay. Then he's eventually killed and decapitated by MacDonald, I believe. Um, and his wife kills herself, I believe, sort of shortly before that. So they lose everything. Okay, eventually, this is where this leads. They lose everything. He loses his mind. His wife loses her mind. She kills herself. He gets killed. He's gonna commit more murders as this goes on. But the tragedy of Macbeth is where he begins from, which is at the top, as high as you can be. And this ties into something which I say so many times to you guys in my lessons, which is that success, true success, is in being a good person. This is true success. And we can see this laid out very clearly here. Okay, Macbeth gains more power, he gains more wealth, more influence. He becomes the king of Scotland, the highest position you can take. But this is not seen as success by anyone. It's seen as failure, ultimate failure. You see, because he does it in an evil way. You see. Now the reason why I mention that he kills the king and why that is important is because the king, symbolically and also literally for people of Macbeth's time and Shakespeare's time, the king represented the will of God on earth. The king was not just a political position, like how we have a president or prime minister or politician. You have like a political party. The king was supposed to be the representative of God on earth. That God chose this person or family, whatever, to lead this nation. And so when the king is in power, it's like there's unity, harmony between heaven and earth. The king represents the in-between point of heaven and earth. You have God, you have the king, and then you have the people. This is how ancient people saw the king. So when Macbeth kills the king, it's not just murder, but it is what you call regicide, which means he is essentially, it's like he's going against the will of God. He is completely buying into evil. That's sort of how you can think about it. And this is why, okay, when he does this, and even when he's thinking about it, nature begins to change. This is why all that stuff happens when to the land, when nature begins to change. This is from his soliloquy. Here, like this. Now, o'er the one half world, nature seems dead, and wicked dreams abuse the curtained sleep witchcraft celebrates. You see, evil is beginning to take over the land. Why? Because he's right here, he's thinking about, he's gonna kill the king. You see, he's gonna go against the will of God on earth. Now, what does this mean for us? Okay, because obviously a king is not actually chosen by God, obviously. Obviously. So what does this mean for us? What it means for us, okay, is that the king represents like an ideal. Okay. Each of us have a king or a queen. If you think this is the king. And the king is ideal, higher self, direction. This is what the king is. Okay. Which is why you say that the king is associated with God. You can take God to mean good or like ultimate good. That's another way to think about God. God is like the highest good. So when Macbeth kills the king, okay, obviously it's bad in terms of the action itself. Um, and it destroys him psychologically because he's now a murderer. He's killed someone innocent. Okay, but it also destroys him because he has killed his higher self. Okay, that's also why it destroys him. So you can think about the king would be like the opposite to like the witches. Okay. If you imagine the witches are like the evil self, like the dark voice inside you, which whispers to you at times, do this or do that. Especially in times when it comes to what you might desire. Okay, when it comes to power, especially. The witches are like evil power, which is why it's like magic. So if this is the king, the witches would be like this. They're like an opposite triangle. Mm-mm. The witches are like this. Okay. Excuse me. Actually, dark self, weak self. What should I call it? Um, uh, call it vices, but it's like I don't know, s- destruction, something like that. Okay, this is what the witches are. Okay, this is what the witches are. So each of us, we all have both of these. Okay, inside of us. All right, we have both. We have the witches and we have the king. Yeah, or the queen. And um, I could add to this success. Success. So we have both. Okay, should be destruction. Okay, so we have both inside of us. Okay, we have the king and we have the witches, both. Now, again, the king represents the higher self. Okay, like your good voice, the voice that pulls you in a positive direction. King represents like the ultimate good, the good that happens when you, um, it's like all the virtues put into one. That's the king. Okay. And remember, the king represents like God on earth. So if God is like the ultimate good, the king is almost like God in human form. Like the Egyptians used to believe that the pharaoh was God incarnate. Okay, and many different cultures have believed something similar, that the king is God incarnate, God in human form. I believe one of the names for Christ is the King of Man. I know this, the Son of Man. I don't know if it's the King of Man. I could be mixing up my um, cultures here. I might be wrong. In any case, it's very common that people would believe that the king was God incarnate. Okay? Even Caesar, to some extent, believed this about himself, which is why when he went to Rome, not to Rome, to Egypt, he made them turn him into one of their gods. Okay, I believe he made a cult for himself to the Egyptians. This is when he went to Egypt to meet Cleopatra and all that. In any case, it's a very common idea. Okay, and the base of it or the root of it is that inside you you have a thing, a way that you know you should behave, a way that you know you should act, which is all about, the virtues which I talk about all the time: truth, love, courage, fairness, all of that. And if you act this way, you become kingly, which is why people like to be around you. You become like a leader. Yeah, the more of these qualities you have, the more leadership you develop. You become respected among people. You become loved by people. Okay, you become kingly. Not in a political sense, but in a spiritual sense. You become great. Okay. Now, the opposite of this is the witches. The witches are like the dark self, the dark forces. Okay. The more you engage with the witches, the weaker you become. Okay. The more weak, evil you become. That's the voice which tells you to do this bad thing, that bad thing, to hurt this person, hurt that person. So then you can gain something, get ahead here, get what you desire here, do this thing here, be sneaky over here, tell this lie over here. And the witches essentially are the collection of the negative qualities a person can have, like lying, being mean or cruel to people, cheating people, being unfair, stealing from people, and so on. Okay. Now, if you engage, because life is fair, okay, the universe is very fair. The scales are very fair. If you decide that you want to engage in an evil life, okay, you will be pulled in a downward direction. You're not going to be stopped. Unless you get put in jail or something, then you will be stopped. But even inside the jail, you can continue spiraling down if you choose to, until someone kills you or something like that. Yeah, or you kill yourself. So, the universe is very fair. And now if you decide to turn around, change direction, and to start spiraling up, the universe will help you. You'll find good things to help you. And again, I'm not talking about anything to do with money or politics or power or anything like that. Like, politically, I'm talking all internal and as a human being. Okay? This path will take you to weakness, as we see with Macbeth, how it destroys him and his wife psychologically. And even with the witches themselves, even though they have magical power, you can see how they operate is not in the brightness of day. They don't appear on the battlefield and, you know, destroy everything. They appear like in the mist, on a heath, like on a hill somewhere, huh? In the darkness, after a storm, when people are distracted. Why? Because evil is fundamentally weak. Evil is fundamentally weak. And so when you engage in evil, you take yourself from being a hero, okay, who can take on armies, to being a nobody, a nothing, a, a frightened shell of a human being, as what happens to Macbeth. Okay, at the end of the text, he is shell of a human, killed easily. Okay, and his head is cut off by, yeah, what's his name? MacDonald. That's where he ends up. Not to mention murderer of innocent people. So before he becomes, he commits more murders when he kills the family of MacDonald and also when he kills his best friend, Banquo, whose ghost comes to haunt him. I believe he also kills one of Banquo's sons. I'm not sure on that. In any case, he kills his best friend, who's innocent, Banquo. He kills his homeboy, his brother, his best friend. Hmm? So you can see he goes from being a hero who is ultimately strong, able to conquer armies. Yeah. So much so that the king promotes him to losing himself gradually until he is a shell of a human being who is killed easily by MacDonald. So this is what happens when you take the dark path, the evil path. Okay. And again, he does this ironically in the pursuit of power, but he loses all of his power. Okay. He completely loses all of his power and he is destroyed. He loses his wife, he loses all of his power, and he loses his life at the end. And he is disgraced. His reputation is destroyed. He loses everything. Okay. And so this ties into what I was saying about the about evil being weak. Evil only exists um, in the dark. Okay, evil only exists in the dark. Like even today, when you think about crime, when you think about crime, even the biggest, quote unquote, biggest criminals, what you call gangsters, even they must have codes of silence and things like this. Why? Because they cannot do their evil in the open. Why? Because they will be destroyed by the rest of us. You see? So they're scared, and thus they do their crime in the shadows, in the background. Yeah, like little rats. Yes, because they are afraid of the light of justice, the light of day. You see? And when you think about today when you say where is, a lot of bad things, it happens not on the main internet. That's not where evil happens. It happens on what they call the dark web. Means the hidden part of the internet. Yes. Why? Because if it's on the main part, they're gonna get hacked and people will attack them. They're gonna get arrested and all that. You see? Evil, and that's like the witches. They appear and then they disappear. They don't just hang around. They don't talk to the king. Why? Because the king will kill them. You see? They're not strong, they're weak. And this is the fundamental misunderstanding that many people have, okay, when it comes to evil and good, when it comes to power, truth about power. This is a big fundamental misunderstanding that many people have when it comes to power. Okay, is that evil is the weakest thing in existence. Evil is the weakest thing in existence. Good is the strongest thing in existence. And this reminds me of a very, very nice painting and also sort of um, story, which is like biblical. Okay. Which is that there's a story that the devil, there's a story that the devil, um, that basically the devil challenged God. Okay. The story that the devil challenged God and he said that I am like God. Satan said this. And again, obviously, this is not like literal, this didn't actually happen, but just think about it mythologically, metaphorically, psychologically. Okay. Because it's powerful. Okay. So the devil says to God, Satan says to God, I am like you. Okay, I am like you. I'm on your level. Satan represents evil. God represents good, ultimate evil. Okay. The story goes that God, to punish him, he sent down the angels. And the angel, one that he sent down was Angel Michael, the Archangel Michael. And it's likely that I'll probably get a tattoo of him on my arm somewhere because Michael represents the heroic force against the darkness. That's what Michael is a symbol of. The warrior, the hero, the light in the dark. It goes back beyond Christianity. Before that, goes back to like Horus, like Baal, things like that. Anyway, so God sends the angels down to teach Satan a lesson, basically. And there's a very famous painting. Okay, there's a very famous painting which has, if I can show you guys maybe, which has Michael. This is a very famous painting which has Michael stepping on the neck of Satan. And This one is very famous. And basically, what this painting represents is the fundamental relationship between good and evil. This is what it looks like. Okay, which is what so many people get wrong at. They get confused about this. They don't understand. Good and evil are not equivalent. Okay, good and evil are not equivalent. They are not like equal. Okay, it's not like, good is the strong and then evil is like, it's not like good is the strong and then evil is um equivalently strong. No. Good is like this. Evil is like this. You see? Good is infinitely stronger than evil. Evil is like this. And the story goes, okay, this is the angel Michael. When he stepped on the head of Satan, okay, like this. You see, this is Satan down here. When he stepped on the head of Satan, which represents evil, Michael asked him, who is like God? That's the question he asked him. Who is like God? Yeah, and it's almost like sarcastic, you see. And it's actually what the name Michael means. Mikael means who is like El, which is God. So the point is, okay, this is the truth when it comes to power. The point is that evil is extremely weak. And anytime good faces evil, good wins. Always. Okay? Good always wins. It's universal. It's a natural law. You can have an infinite darkness of space. If you have one star, it will illuminate the space. You see? A star can illuminate space. And the light travels so far that we can read the light. You see? If you have a if you have a room, okay, which is hundreds of feet big in all directions, it's massive, massive room, and it's pitch black. If you have a flame which is this big, a little candle this big, you will see the candle despite how dark the room is. And in fact, the candle will light up the room. You see, it will change the brightness in the room. And it's this big. The room is hundreds of feet big. The candle is this big. This is a universal law. Okay. And what this means is this is why Macbeth gets destroyed. He destroys himself. This is why he is destroyed. Why? Because he aligns himself with weakness, which is evil. Yeah, in search of power. And ironic thing is, power is only gained through good. True power comes from goodness. Okay, this is why democracy dominates the world. This is why democracy dominates the world. Why every nation is heading towards democracy. Even the most dictatorial, even the most tyrannical, they are heading towards democracy. Why? Because people want to be free. Freedom is a human right. It's a human natural good. People want to be able to speak. Yes. Uh, they want to be able to share their ideas. They don't want someone to oppress them, rule them. You see? And when democracy is allowed to uh, rule, yes, and fairness and justice and things like this are the basis that the state gets built on, the state dominates. The state gains the state gains global power. Yes. Like in many ways, America, despite all the tragedies and bad things they did in terms of, say, slavery or whatever, excuse me, the the slave having version of America did not dominate the world. You see, it didn't dominate the world. When America had slaves, other countries were in charge, like Britain and things like that, of the world. But when America dealt with its slavery problem, hmm, though there was still obviously unfairness and things. But when it dealt with the slavery problem and more of its original founding document, which is about freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to live life without being oppressed and all that stuff. When more of that was allowed to grow, it became the most powerful country in the world. You see, it doesn't happen by domination. It happens from goodness, principles, truth, fairness, etc. And so this is why Macbeth destroys himself, because he aligns with the evil. Yeah, why instead of aligning with the good, you see. And this is why he gets ruined, him and his wife. Okay. Um, and he does all of this in the pursuit of power. And he doesn't gain any power because again, true power is ethical power. True power is from being good. Now, I was gonna talk about his soliloquies, but I don't know how long I've been going for. I don't know if I want to keep on going. I don't want to make this video too long. Okay, I think maybe I'll stop back because that's quite good. I think that's a good place to stop. And the opposite to Macbeth is Banquo. Okay, and Banquo dies respected. He dies with good reputation. And not just him, but MacDonald is the one who is the hero in the story. MacDonald never becomes the bad like Macbeth does, even though both of them start the same in the beginning. MacDonald is also like a Thane, he's like a lord. He stays loyal to the king, and then eventually he helps the king's son to defeat Macbeth. And when it happens, he doesn't try to take the throne for himself, to take power, but he stays good and he allows the son to take power. Yeah, he puts nature back in its place. He puts everything back correctly. You see, so he rises, whereas Macbeth falls, self-destructs. So this is how power plays out in the story. Okay, and I was gonna go into the Basilica, but I think I've been going for quite a while, so I think I'll stop. But it's very important, okay, to remember this. It's really important. So to not be scared of evil, because evil is the weakest thing that exists. Okay, it's the weakest thing that exists. And good is the strongest thing that exists. And you do not gain power by being evil. You gain weakness. You rot yourself out from the inside. Anytime I feel like being evil, okay, and I'm human, so I get flashes of desire also to be evil in certain different ways. The thing primarily that stops me, besides my values and my principles, is this idea and knowledge that evil is weak. And so, how can I make myself weak? I can't bear to do that. It's too weak to do that. Okay? Something to keep in mind. All right. Okay, take care.